Welcome to the Real Estate Power Play Podcast, your launch pad for skyrocketing success in real estate investing. I'm your host, Gabe Rodarte, alongside Mark Monroe. We're ready to bring you transformative stories, groundbreaking strategies, and the insider secrets of real estate giants. Get ready to accelerate your investment journey and become a true power player in the world of real estate.
Okay, welcome to Real Estate Power Play. Hopefully this thing is recording okay. And this is our second take. I feel we actually did this last week and the quality came out horrible. I don't know why. Over in Zoom, the quality of the whole broadcast and everything, it was all corrupt and everything came out bad. So Nathan, I apologize. Thank you for coming back again, but I definitely want to get you on here because, we have a lot to go over and you got your big event coming up, but we'll go through that here in a little bit. But I know last time we talked about your weekend. How was this past weekend?
Let's see, this past weekend, what did we do? I know. My son and I went up to go snowboarding. We've got season passes up at their ski hill up here. We got one run in. One. We went up and it was a beautiful day. It was really a shame because it was such a nice day and it was warm and the snow was nice and grippy, like no ice or anything. And as we came down to like there's a lower chair and then an upper chair, and by the time we got down to that upper chair again, it was stopped. And it was because it was a windy day, so it didn't, I didn't think it was that windy, but I guess it was windy enough. But all the chairs had been shut down, so we went, oh shoot. So we decided, rather than chance it and get stuck on a chair somewhere, we'd rather just go home. And
That
that's the
happened to
beauty of
me.
having a season
Yeah, that
select
happened to me a
tickets.
few years ago. I was skiing
Ooh,
Lake Tahoe, the Heavenly Resort, and they have
okay.
the Nevada side and the California side, and
Yeah.
the one that to cross over, the chairlift was shut down, so everybody was getting stuck on one side, and they had to take buses all the way back around to the other side.
Oh
Luckily,
wow.
I lucky they're mentioning that they're shutting it down when we're at the top, so we kind of lucky we went over back towards the other side. We are staying in the California side, so we got real lucky
Well,
on that.
that's,
But it's crazy how
yeah.
it can just shut down like that. The wind, like it's amazing.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it was windy, but I didn't think it was that bad. But apparently, I guess so. But all the chairs were shut down. We even the bunny hill. We thought, well, we'll just do the bunny hill a few times just to wait it out. And even that was shut down. So we're like, nah, forget it. We're going home.
Oh. So let's just dive in. Let's we've known each other for a while now. I went
Yeah.
to your last event in Nashville. I actually
Yes.
spoke at that event, so thank you very much for having me on. I actually had a great time. Met some fabulous people there. Why don't you plug it real quick, and then we're going to ask questions, and you can kind of plug it again. So you have your event coming up again in this, what is it, end of June? No, end of May, early June. Why don't you go ahead and I'll let you talk.
Sure. Yeah. So it's May 31st, June 1st in Nashville, Tennessee. It's called the Diversified Mortgage Expo. And it's the place to be if you're looking to do anything with notes. If you're creating notes, if you're buying notes, if you're brand new and you don't know anything about it. It was interesting last year at the beginning, we kind of did sort of an informal survey to see who's brand new and who's been doing this a long time. And I was surprised at how evenly split it was. I thought that we'd have more newbies, but it was actually very evenly split. So, which means you've got the brand new people that had never even heard of it. They just barely heard of this and thought they'd come and check it out. And the guys that had, 100 note portfolios that had been doing this for years and years and years. So that whole gambit was there, and it was a great place to come together, meet each other. I'm really hoping that people that are doing creative finance come, because this is a fantastic place for you to come learn how to create your notes so that if you want to sell them sometime in the future, you've got a network of people that are ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of the people that I met there were unbelievable. The networking was just at another level. It was great. Great group of people. Everybody flew in from all over the country. And,
Yeah,
Nashville, the food.
the food, the atmosphere, the everything. Like on the Friday night, people like to go out and have fun and whatever. In downtown Nashville, if you've never been there, I mean, it's a blast. I'm not much of a party guy, but it's a blast. There's so much fun just hanging around. And then that's the beauty. You go out with people that you just met that day, and you start to build those relationships, and you start to kind of put together what can we do together in business and how can we make this work. And it's just a magic formula. It works really well.
No, I thought it was great. Definitely, I really truly appreciate it. Whoops, somebody was just sending me a call at the same time, so I hate that. I'm on here and I'm like, I want all the programs shut down, and people are sending me messages all at the same time. You ever notice that's how it always happens?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Nathan, we talked briefly last time. How did you get started in the note game? Why don't you kind of give a little brief background on yourself on how it all started?
Yeah, for sure. So I going back a little ways. So I did some fix and flip. I ended up being a landlord for a little bit back in like '05, '06, '07. And then just as everything was starting to go haywire, uh, I was kind of introduced into this world and kind of ish. So a friend of mine had networked into a group of investors who had bought a portfolio of properties, mostly centered in the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, where they had bought this portfolio April of 2007, so like height of the market, and they had intended to just flip this portfolio out to somebody else. That deal fell through. By the time I came into the scene in the fall of 2008, everything was just going nuts, and they knew they were in trouble. So they basically just kind of gave us carte blanche and said, whatever you can do, just try to help us get out of this pickle. We know we're in trouble here, so do whatever you can do. So we kind of thought we'd invented seller financing. A couple of Canadian boys, it's really not done in Canada, so we thought we'd kind of come up with this brilliant idea of selling houses on terms and creating these. We didn't even call them notes; we called them contracts. We didn't even know there was a name for that. But then as we kind of got into it, I went to my first note conference in 2009 down in Louisiana, which was awesome. And it blew my mind just to see how many people were out here that knew what I was talking about when I was talking about this seller. I learned it was called seller financing. I learned they were called notes. I learned all this stuff, and I learned that there's a whole community out there doing it. So that's kind of how I got started. Started buying non-performing. We were buying non-performing notes to get the property, and then we would use creative financing to sell the houses on the back end, and then sell the notes. So it has just kind of morphed over the years. These days, personally, I've got my mortgage. I've got my fund where we buy performing mortgages, and then that's a big piece of what we're doing now.
That's great. Yeah, I did my first note by accident at the age of 19. I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah,
It worked out great. I loved it. I should have started a little bit sooner in it, but yeah, you would just you stum I we all kind of stumbled into the note world by accident.
yeah,
When I was 19, but then I got into real estate banking at the age of 25, and then I really got into the notes, with my lending business. So, do you remember how
it's
many
education.
notes that you created out of a portfolio back then?
Not a ton. We were able to sell some of them just for cash, just for any kind of cash flow for ourselves, and then we were able to do seller financing, probably a dozen of them out of the 60. Some of them we'd found that the houses had already been demolished, like they're rough houses in rough neighborhoods. Um, but probably a dozen or so where we did the seller financing, and that's where it kind of clicked. So we went from that and then started doing a project based right in Columbus, Ohio. Just we thought, okay, the concept works, but let's figure out how to do it more efficiently. So we went down just to Columbus, Ohio, buying those non-performing notes, get the property, and then sell it back on terms. And that worked for a couple of years. It was great. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. No, did you, now you said this was in 2009?
Yeah. So first note conference 2009, we started doing those seller finance properties like 2009, 10, winding it down by the end of 2010. And that's when I started buying the non-performing. And then with the non-performing, man, it can go all kinds of different directions. So seller financing, having that little bit of experience under my belt was extremely helpful just to know one more strategy of something else we could
Were,
do.
were the notes that you purchased, any of them becoming non-performing? Is that how you kind of got into the non-performing?
No, they were already non-performing. So I
Oh,
had learned about that. I had taken a class like 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. And they kind of talked about it as a different strategy, but it wasn't something that a lot of people were pursuing at the time. And then I was presented with an opportunity to buy three non-performing notes, all in Columbus, Ohio, for a total of $10,000. I'm like, well, that sounds like a $10,000 experiment I'm willing to do.
Absolutely.
So we did that, and it worked incredibly well. We did very well on those ones, and so I was hooked after that. That
What
this is
was
the way to go.
the face value in those notes that you purchased at 10,000? What were they? Well, I know the market was
Uh,
shifting a little bit, but a ballpark.
yes, very shifty market at the time. So property values were probably between $20,000 and $30,000 each, uh, which I figured there's no way I can lose money on these.
So it's like
And
10 cents
then
on a dollar in a sense, pretty much.
yeah, yeah, and then that was the other interesting thing is back then the balance on the note was probably like 60, 70,000. So just because of the time, and that's just kind of how it went. But
So
no,
what'd
it
you end up
worked.
doing with those notes? Did you take the properties back or did you work something out with them? Like what was the
Yeah.
the exit strategy on those?
So on two of them, it ended up working out that the owners of those properties lived in another house in Columbus, Ohio. So they had bought these properties as rental properties, income properties that they thought was a good idea at the time, and probably was. So I was able to locate to the owners were still in Columbus. I was able to just knock on the door and say, "Hey, I'm not here to collect any money. I just want the property. Are you willing to just sign it over to me in exchange for wiping out your loan?" And they're like, "Absolutely." Two for two. They're like, "Are you kidding me?" Yes, of course. So I signed over the property, and that's how I went from owning the note to owning the property. And then on the third one, the other kind of aha moment that I had was the owner of the property lived in Arizona, like way far away, totally removed from the property. And on that one, we knew this before we went in, but it was a property that was not too far from from Ohio State University. And so the idea was it had had a fire. We were going to just demolish it and then rebuild it as student housing. And the more we went into it, the more it was hard to get that money together. And it's a big project to do that kind of thing. And I'm in Canada, my partner's in California. And the biggest thing was there was a $10,000 tax lien on the property. And the big like light bulb moment for me was it's not my house. So I'm not actually directly responsible for those taxes. So I can just let it go. I can just do nothing. I've already made my money on those other two, and there's no repercussions. There's no problem with just letting it go. So that was like, oh, wow. So that's actually not mine to pay. I can if I want, and I could use it to, save the house and go on with my plan. But the rest of the plan wasn't coming together, and I'd already made my money. So, nah. So we just let it go back to the county.
So you lost
Done.
out. You didn't get anything on that one then. You just let it go.
Yeah, not on that. We sold
Okay.
one of them for cash for 20,000, so I already doubled my money. And then
Nice.
the other one we ended up renting it out for $500 or $600 a month, and we held on to that for about a year before we sold that. So
Nice.
we did
That's great.
really well. Yeah,
Nice. So
yeah,
do you have any other options like so yeah, you can just let it go. So you had and you probably got the write off too because whatever that face value note
yeah,
is on top of it.
yeah, exactly.
Excuse me. Whoops. Sorry about that. So that even helps you
That's
out because you got the write off. I had a friend recently. He has a business. And what they do is they like to build the ground up in this business, and I don't want to kind of get into it because I don't want people kind of knowing who he is or anything. Because if I say it, what he does, then they may know. But anyways, what happened was he had a business. His model was he took a loan out for 17 million in Ohio. Um,
yeah.
and he developed the business, and then after the business is up and running, he sells the business off and he holds the real estate. Well, what happened was they took a loan out for 17 million, they paid down 14 million, and guess what? COVID hit. So it really,
Okay.
and they took the loan out from a small community bank up there. And then what happened was um, the bank wanted it off the books so bad because I guess they needed the write off, and at the time, for every bad dollar you had to have a few dollars set aside. They end up buying the note from the bank. Now, granted, they owed 14 million. They bought the note from the bank for $4 million.
Wow.
Think about that one.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's incredible. There's
Wow.
so many opportunities with notes. It's a great
And the
business.
bank got the write off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So they're not sad necessarily. You know what I mean? Like they're okay with that. They needed that write off anyway, so that's okay.
nice.
Win win.
So I know we connected because I do a lot of seller financing and originate. I usually hold most of my stuff. I usually don't sell them, but it is amazing another strategy because I create the notes, but I guess I haven't really started buying notes yet, and I probably should. I had a good friend of mine over the past year buying. He's purchased over 200 land notes, maybe a little
Okay,
bit more. Um, Over a year, and now he's cash flowing about $45,000 a month off of these land notes. Isn't that crazy?
that's amazing.
Off
Yeah, that's
land
great.
notes.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and that's my plan is that's my retirement is buy a portfolio of notes, live off of it. That's it.
Yeah.
And then
No,
as
he's
one
doing.
pays off, I replace it.
I know. I was shocked. I was like, "Whoa!" Yeah, yeah. So he lives off of some, and he keeps returning, putting some back in because eventually those notes will come, they'll be paid off at some point or come,
Yeah.
completely or refinance or whatever you want to call it or sold. So you
Yeah.
constantly have to keep putting the capital back in the notes. So I think it's a great idea, and it's,
Yeah.
and think about it. Your car. If you get a flat tire or your battery dies, does the car lender care about if they want their money compared to a landlord? You have to go out there and you got to change the tire, you got to change the car. So there's definitely a
Right.
difference. Just carrying the notes in the paper. That's what I like. I love creating that arbitrage.
Yeah, it's the way to go. And then, and then you can go all kinds of directions with it. Like, for example, what if you can do all that in an IRA? Or what if you don't even buy the note? You give your note to somebody like me with a fund, completely passive. You don't have to do anything about it. It just comes in, and then that you're building that income in your IRA or your Roth IRA or your 401k and growing that all tax free.
Right. Why don't you talk about that a little bit? Because I understand it, but I think a lot of users, when you say that and their 401k, their head might spin a little bit. Like, how does that work? Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, and I get extra excited about it because it's not available to me. I'm a Canadian citizen, so I don't get to use IRAs. We've got our Canadian equivalent, but honestly, it's not as good in some ways. Some ways it's actually better. But anyway, we won't get into that. But IRAs are a fantastic vehicle, and there are several. And in fact, we're going to have a couple of different IRA companies at the conference coming up at Diversified Mortgage Expo. But they are the experts, so they can fill in the blanks. But basically, you can set up an IRA that's self-directed, meaning you can choose where those funds go. So you can choose to put it into notes yourself. You can choose to put that into all kinds of different things, and then build that income in your retirement account tax free. So literally, you can go, say you've got $100,000 in there, put it into whatever investment you'd like. I think notes is a great one, and a note fund is even better. But put it in there, let it sit, and let it just accumulate, and you don't have to do anything about it. And then that's all tax free money, and then you can take that out when it's time for retirement. It's a
It's great.
great, great way to build
Yep.
your retirement.
So the companies that you have in there, they're called what, custodians, and they're the ones that are the middle party between your IRA or 401k. So it has to be do all the legal proper paperwork and then pass it on into whatever fund or whatever note that they're investing or whatever that they're looking to do for their investment vehicle.
Yeah, and you can, like I say, you can use an IRA. You can use a 401k from an old employer. You can use that to self-direct and put that wherever you'd like. I mean, it's a fantastic vehicle.
So let's talk a little bit towards the people that are in the seller financing world where I work with a lot of these people, and you're in the group, you're out there very active in the seller financing home group. I think we're up to almost 110,000 members in there now.
That's great.
And we're definitely going to post this in there so that people can. So those people that are fairly new doing seller financing, or creative deals, if you will,
Mhm.
because a lot of times they know seller financing, but we also have the other strategies. We have the lease options, the lease options, and also the agreement for deeds and land contracts or whatever you want to call them. You also do those as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So when I first got started, when I was creating those notes, it was in Ohio. So in Ohio, it's called a land contract. Absolutely, I was all over that. So we were selling these houses on land contract, collecting the payments. The cool thing is the borrower is the one that takes care of the property, which is fantastic. If you've been a landlord, you know how much fun it's not. Where you're having to, at the very least, you have to set aside a portion of the rent every month for eventual repairs that you're gonna have to do at some point. And it's just And I can tell you from experience, yes, those repairs come up, and they come up probably more often than you would like. So it's just more work, more hassle to deal with.
Yep.
Now, on the downside, you don't get the appreciation. Well, on a land contract, yes, you do, because you still own the property. Uh,
Now,
but
who gets the
it gets
depreciation?
more.
You as the note holder or the buyer? Who's the one that's getting the depreciation?
So my understanding is the appreciation or the depreciation.
Either or, once you talk about both, well, the depreciation, because the end buyer, I'm assuming, because based off the contract, you're locking into a price, they're getting appreciation. But who's the one that's getting the depreciation on it?
That's you. That's you, the homeowner. You get to write that off. So I mean, that's a
Sure.
win-win. I'm a big fan, and it's interesting. So Dave pretty well. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of land contracts, contracts for deed, agreement for deed, bond for deed, agreement, whatever. It's got all kinds of different names. I'm a big fan. Dave's not. He actually doesn't like those for different reasons, but I think because that's what I started with, I'm really comfortable with those. I'm happy to look at those and buy those if the numbers work.
Mm. And typically, if something goes bad on those, do you go through the whole legal process, or you just try to work something out with them and try to like cash for keys type of situation?
Yeah, as a note investor, I want notes. I don't necessarily want properties. So I would rather work something out with the borrower if there's something to work out. If there's not, and that happens, that's fine. Then we'll look at a cash for keys, a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and see if there's something else we can work out. Foreclosures are a last option. That being said, it's a viable option, and it's one that can be exercised, and it's very effective. But I don't want to own property if I can help it. So I would rather just own the note, and I'll do what I can to keep it that way.
So what do you give them, like a three strike rule? Like, all right, you put them on a payment plan, get them back to normal type of situation, or is it a case by case?
It's really case by case, and we'll talk together and figure out, okay, what's the problem, and then see what we can do about that to address the problem itself, rather than just, you know, it can be easy to say, okay, well, let's just lower your monthly payment. Is that really going to work? Is that going to make any difference? Does that help you as the owner of that land contract or contract for deed? Is that actually viable for you? So it's really a case by case. And I've done all kinds of things. We've done it where we've actually raised the interest rate, where we've raised the payment, where we've shortened the amortization, where we've lengthened it, where everything you can think of. And we've done all kinds of things, whatever works for that situation.
Nice. That totally makes sense. Yeah, I like that a lot because you have to. I mean, you know, like you said, foreclosure is the last result, but we all been there. We go through it. We'd
Mhm.
rather deal because it doesn't end well for anybody. It doesn't end well for them, and it doesn't end well for you. I mean, you can get the property back, yes, or you get the note back, or you can resell it. But yeah, but in some cases, you're looking to buy those to try to take that because you can buy it at a discount. When somebody's in that, and what do? You normally go in and just kind of work something out with the previous person. Like, say if I have a piece of property and they haven't paid me in 8 months, and I'm like, Nathan, here you go, take this note off my hands. Tell me a little bit, like, what's your strategy, what you would think you would do on something like that.
And it's funny because in a situation like that, it happens pretty often where they didn't make payments to you, and you guys have had some kind of relationship in the past, and for whatever reason, yeah, it's just become difficult. I then come in as the new person that doesn't know anything about the situation, and I can go in and say, okay, so what is the issue, how can we resolve it? And because there's no bad blood there, it's much easier, and I've seen that time and time again where it's so much easier for me as a third party to come in and say, okay, well, I know, I understand that, Mark. Yeah, he's seriously a jerk. Yeah, I was like, no, I agree. And we
It's
can
not.
go through
It's
the whole thing.
it's funny you say that. I actually had one like that.
Yeah,
I tried everything and they just did not like me. And then it got to a point where I
yeah,
was like, it was just like, and I did. I'm like, here, take this deal. I lost like 25. I actually lost more than that on that one. Um, and then the next person came in, worked out a whole thing, gave him some cash for keys, and just it worked out well. Where I should have done it in the beginning, but I listened to my attorney. Keep that in mind. Be careful. Listen to your attorneys.
yeah, yeah. They're useful and they're needed, but they don't
So
necessarily have all the answers.
yeah,
So
wait till your attorney. If you can't resolve it till last, try to work it out with them first, because the attorneys just make things, especially with their attorney and your attorney get together. That's where it gets really bad, and that's where they're always like
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. But then as a third party, I come in and all of a sudden I'm the hero because I just don't know anything about the situation. I can come in totally fresh and totally clean, and we can make something work.
I don't know if I told you my first note deal at 19. Did I ever tell you how I did that note?
I don't think so. No.
It's pretty wild. I was 19 years old, in the small little town of Vermont, and I bought the old Carlton Sheets course back in the day,
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, put signs up. We buy houses." So I put these signs up on the we buy houses on the telephone pole. Well, I didn't know I couldn't put stuff on the telephone pole. I got yelled at by the municipality. So, but during that time period before I took it down, this guy called me up and goes, "Hey, I got this mobile home for sale. It's worth $21,000. Give me 18,000 for it." And I'm like, I don't want a mobile home. I have no clue what I'm doing, by the way. And then he
Right.
calls me back like a week later. Give me $15,000. It's worth 21,000. I'm like, I'm not interested. Another week or two goes by. He calls me up, goes, "Give me $12,000 for this mobile home. It's worth 21." I'm thinking, okay, do you own the land? No, I don't. It's in a mobile home park. I'm like, I'm not interested. So about a month goes by. Calls me again.
Yeah.
Give me $6,000 for this mobile home. It's worth 21,000. Now I'm thinking my
Yeah.
back of my mind, okay, this is a deal. But I kept saying, I'm not interested. No, no, thank you. But this is what I'll do. I'll give you $3,000 to help you out, because I found out he has lot rent and he wasn't living there and he just didn't have the money. I'm like, I'll give you $3,000. He goes, go, give
Right.
me four. I'm like, I'm not interested. He goes, okay, I'll do it for 3,000. So all right, I have to go get a contract. I got to send somebody out to inspect the property. So what I did is I hung up, put an ad in the newspaper. Uh, owner mobile home for sale for $25,000. Owner financing with $3,000 down. Put that ad
Nice.
up. Went and got the contract. While I was doing that, the ad went. Um, the first person that called me, the lady, her and her boyfriend and her child, they went out there, looked at it. They wanted it immediately. So I took the $3,000 from them, gave it to the seller, created a note like around like 7 3/4 over 7 years. I was 19 years old, and it ended up being my car payment, insurance payment over like 7 years. I had no clue what I was doing. I'm sure the paperwork was screwed up because it was like motor vehicle. So that was my first creative deal. I had
That's
no clue
awesome.
what I was doing.
Yeah. No. And I mean, in that case, like your return is infinite. Like you got no money in the deal. That's fantastic. That's amazing.
I think I had to pay like $150 for transfer because it was like a motor vehicle at that time. I didn't know anything about it because it wasn't, but it still worked. That's how,
Yeah.
a trailer or a mobile home was considered a motor vehicle. And this was up in Vermont.
Yeah.
So it worked out well. And then I got into school and then the corporate world. And then I got back in at the age of 25. And then a year or two later, that's when I really started doing the investing and getting back into it. So I wish I stayed in it earlier when I was 19.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's life experience. Any kind of experience is good experience. So that's good.
So, your event coming up in Nashville,
Yes.
what kind of speakers do you have? What kind of things that you have going on at this particular event?
Let me look at the schedule over here because we've got all kinds of really cool stuff happening. We've got panels on, oh, this is cool. So we've got somebody coming from the Mortgage Bankers Association. They're going to talk to us about like what's the state of the market, what do they see coming down the pipe. They've been very accurate on their predictions so far, so I'm always interested to hear what they have to say. We've got, man, attorneys talking about different ways to look at paperwork, and if you're buying a note, what's important, what's not, kind of thing. We've got different breakout sessions where we're going to actually look at one of the sessions. They're going to actually look at a tape, so like a list of loans for sale, and go through with everybody there an interactive session saying, okay, this is what we like about this note, this is what we don't like about this note, and go through with everybody there live so you can see what matters, what doesn't matter, how to
That's
break it
cool.
down, how to look at numbers. Cool stuff like that. We've got people talking about different approaches that they use going into notes. We've got a guy that I'm using right now all about capital raising and how to use social media to do that effectively. And that's day one. Besides the
That's awesome.
networking, besides different activities we've got going on. So that's
Everybody,
just day one.
everybody's going to
So
be
good.
involved in that one. We're always out there trying to come up with different ideas and different ways of raising capital.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then I've got you scheduled for day 2 in the morning. So hopefully that's all right with you.
Yeah, I'll be definitely looking forward to it. Yeah,
Great.
that's great. And
Great.
back up to the bankers, the Real Estate Bank Association, what they said
Yeah.
last year, dead on about what
Yeah.
they're seeing. So this was in June, and they're saying what we see is coming in the fall, September, October, about the
Mhm.
commercial world. Boom, they're right on what was happening, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so they're going to do the same kind of thing. They're going to talk about residential and commercial and talk about what's coming down the pipe, what they see happening. And like we said, this last time they were bang on.
Yeah, this can be interesting. I think the government's going to have to step in, in the commercial arena. It was just trillions and trillions of dollars coming due in the commercial. It's gonna be a bloodbath. So I don't know. I got to figure out how we could play that. How can we get some of that government
Exactly.
money?
Exactly. And then what's the overall fallout? So the commercial world obviously is going to suffer, but then what else that will be attached to that? Like what's kind of the collateral damage attached to that? That'll be interesting to see.
True. I do see that the administration threw what 43 is it 43 billion that they're throwing it into converting commercial office buildings into multifamily. I know a few of them are being done in
Yeah.
Chicago. They're trying to do, but it's an alternative. But it's hard. The plumbing situation in those commercial buildings are hard to turn it into multifamily.
Yeah. Plumbing for sure. That's going to be the biggest challenge. And then electric to a lesser extent, but I mean that's a huge renovation. Like that's a lot of
It,
work.
it, if you didn't have the government helping you, it wouldn't be cost effective. It just wouldn't work.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so
No,
Nathan,
agreed.
one more time. What are the dates of this particular? When's the convention? The expo? What do you call it? Expo or convention?
The conference, expo, convention, whatever.
Conference.
It's all the
All of
same
the
kind of
above.
thing.
It's a whole
Yeah.
gathering of note buyers. I love it. And
The
sellers.
gathering. Yeah. And sellers, yes. So it's May 31st, June 1st in Nashville, Tennessee. And you can go check out all the information and tickets and everything on diversifiedmortgageexpo.com. That's
Repeat
the
it one
place
more
to go.
time. Where was it?
Diversifiedmortgageexpo.com.
And how, if somebody, because I know you guys do a podcast as well. Once you, where can they find you there as well?
Yeah, so Dave Putz and I do a podcast every other week on Fridays. We've got one coming up, I believe, this Friday, actually. So it's depending on when this airs. But anyway, this Friday or next Friday. But it's JKP Holdings, and you can just find that on Facebook. And the event is there. That's Dave's company, and then he's got a YouTube channel, and we're on different podcast places or what's called the Apple one and wherever. We're all over the place, but that's what to look up. JKP Holdings.
And are you and David doing like education, training people as well?
To a lesser extent, yes. We do some training. One thing that we do actually from time to time is we do kind of an intermediate training. So if you've gone and you've done your intro course and then you're like, okay, now what? Because those intro courses, it's just an intro. But then we do kind of a little bit more advanced training that'll get you more comfortable with how it works. We've got 2 whole classes all about building a bid calculator so that as you're looking at different deals, you can plug in the numbers and say, okay, so because of this, this, and this, that makes it a good deal. This and this are good, but that one's not good. So that kicks it out, and you can go through and evaluate very
That's
quickly.
awesome. So, Nathan, thank you so much for coming back a week later.
Yeah, yeah,
Hopefully, this quality
definitely a
comes out
pleasure.
much better. So,
Yes,
we'll see it. So, thanks so much. Thank you guys for listening to Real Estate Power Play. If you guys have any questions, you'll be able to click on the link below. We'll have Nathan's information on there as well. And let's see you guys in Nashville. All right, take care. Be well. Take care,
great.
Nathan.
Thank you.
Yep.
You bet.
Bye bye.